Back again for another video. On today's topic, we'll be talking about the four senses of self, the four existences of self. This is something that I've thought about for a long time, and I've come to a conclusion about it. This is something that I meditated on for a long time as well. It's something that I have a very intimate understanding about. It's not completely all coherent, but I thought I would bring it to you guys nonetheless. To put it down in history, not like I'm making history, but as a way to journal this progression of understanding the four senses of self and how it became and what it is now. Now, this one isn't necessarily going to be talking about women, I guess you can say. This is more about the self, the person, and the language that we use. So, if this is not your cup of tea, I definitely understand. But I'm all about self-development and improving and understanding oneself. And these are some of the things that I use to do such. But anyway, so let's get on with it. The four senses of self, the four existences of self, they don't all exist in the same plane of existence. There's one that I don't know where it exactly exists, but the other three I kind of do. I know that the progression is very different in the existences, and I'm going to give it to you just as such. You have the body, you have the mind, you have you, and then there's your higher self. Now, I'm pretty sure you listened to plenty of things that I've said, other people have said, where they mention all of these things. But I'm going to explain to you how I envision them, how they appear to me. Maybe they appear to you as very differently, but I'm sure you'll have some type of relation to how I'm going to explain it if you do experience these four selves. And if you don't, welcome. Welcome to something new. So let's start with the body. And I'm going to explain these, how I've explained them to my submissives before, of how they exist to me. And I'm going to explain to you just the same. How the first one exists, your body. Your body is like an ADHD child that has autism, okay? And I don't want to make that sound kind of strange, but just bear with me. It's around about, if we were to go about age, it's around about 7 or 8, as far as mentality goes. It likes pleasure. It can't speak very well, because remember, this one is autistic, okay? It expresses itself very differently than the other three do. It wants to have fun all the time. It wants to, how can I put it? It wants to avoid pain. It doesn't like experiencing pain. It just likes pleasure. It likes the nice things in life, but it can't speak to you well, okay? And remember, this is a child that we're talking about, right? Keep that in mind. Then there's the mind, okay? The mind is very separate from you, okay? And I'll explain how when I get to you. The mind is very separate in the way that it does analytical functions. It makes decisions, or it poses decisions to be made and selected by you, right? This is the reason why we are separate. I'll explain why we're separate from our minds. Because let's look at the language that we use in describing these things when it comes to mind or body. When someone dies, right? People say, oh, his body was found. Well, where is he? Right? Where is he if his body was found? He's somewhere else. That's the you, okay? And let's look at the mind. The mind is as such. When I say people can change their mind, there's two things. There's two entities there. There's the person, and then there's their mind. Even though we join them together, they are very separate, because you can change your mind. You, remember? You can change your mind. meaning that you can direct the mind in the direction that you want it to go. That's how you know that the mind is very separate from you. You get it? Now, when it comes to you, you are the centerpiece of moral right and moral wrong. You are the one who make the decision if something should or should not happen. Your body is not in charge of that. Your mind is not in charge of that. Now, granted, they have their own autonomy. For instance, your body sneezes when you didn't tell it to. You know, your body has to go to the bathroom when you didn't ask it to, when you didn't direct it to. You know, even if you have to go to the bathroom, you can say, no, we're not going right now because we have something to do. Right? You can tell your body what to do and what not to do. But there are some things and sometimes where your body overrides you, you know, such as passing out. You may not want to pass out, but your body's like, no, we're going to sleep right now. Right? These are all apparatus. How do you say multiple apparatusi? These are multiple apparatus in which you exist in. These are things that you use as tools in order to exist in these different spaces. Remember that they exist at different spaces. Your body doesn't exist where your mind does, and your mind doesn't exist where you exist. And likewise, you don't exist where your mind does, because these are different planes of existence. Okay. Now, when it comes to you, once again, you are the one who makes the decision of where these things should go, right? You decide if something is right or wrong to do. Now, here's a battle that most people have a problem with. They don't understand that they are very separate from their mind. They think that their mind and themselves are very much one and the same. They're not. They're not. And I'll tell you why again. Here's another example. You can know what the right thing to do is, right? But your mind wants to do something else. And you let it override you. It convinces you that this is what we should do, when you are the one who are in charge. The mind is like a teenage child. It can speak very well, but it's adolescent, meaning that it doesn't have the superiority in moral right and moral wrong. It doesn't have the wisdom necessary. Your mind doesn't have wisdom. Your mind is the one that processes thought. It comes up with ideas. It makes solutions for things, but it does not say which way to go. It can suggest which way to go, but it does not say this is the way that we're going unless you allow it. You have to understand this. Remember again that your mind will consider things that are wrong. You know that you know is wrong. It will consider those things. And it's up to you to make the right decision, right? That's the terminology that we use. We don't say, well, your mind didn't make the right decision. We don't use that commonly as a description in regards to someone who made a poor decision. We say, you didn't make the right decision, right? We know this even within our language, that there are very separate portions of self. All right. So let's get on to the next part of it. So now we've discussed the body, the mind, you. What's the fourth one? The fourth one I like to describe as an elderly dementia patient. That is your family. All right. I want you to imagine this. Elderly dementia patient. If you dealt with anybody who has dementia, they're kind of in and out of reality. All right. They say some things that don't make sense, and they say things that make sense at other times, and they seem very coherent at points in times, and then instantaneously they're not coherent again. This is how I imagine the higher self, because if you ever spoken to your higher self, it'll say a lot of things that make sense when you sit with your higher self. Because remember, this is an elderly dementia patient who is very wise and very intelligent. It will say, this is what I think you should do. You know, it'll give you suggestions based upon wisdom, things that you did not consider, that your mind did not consider, that your body is not in action of, right? This is where the separation happens. is very distinct. I don't know if you've experienced this, but I'm just explaining from my point of view. It's very distinct in the way that it expresses itself. But the catch is, you don't get it all at once. It sometimes becomes quiet, or it says incoherent things that doesn't make sense according to what's going on. I don't know if you've seen a lot of movies in regards to dementia patient, or have experience with dementia patient, but they are very connected to the other side, if you want to call it that, because they're very close to it, physically, mentally, and their you part of themselves is very close to it, right? And they say things that are based upon that other side, but sometimes the translation from that other side doesn't come off coherently, because it's not something you can necessarily put into words. It's just something you have to understand. So when your elderly relative who has dementia starts talking and they say things, you're like, what are you talking about? I don't understand it, and they'll continue on and babble, and, they'll say things very, very in a faint voice. They'll whisper almost, and they'll come to you, they'll call you, out of nowhere to tell you about something, to say, I think that this is what you should do about your situation. And you be like, oh, really? Well, that's a good idea. But what about this problem? And they say, well, I don't know what you're talking about. Who is this again? That's how my higher self behaves anyways. I don't know if anyone else has that experience. Maybe my higher self is the only one with dementia. I don't know. But anyways, when it comes to the higher self, it is once again very wise. The things that the higher self says may not make sense right now, because it's speaking once again from that other side of the realm, where it can see things almost nearly to prediction and prophetic, in a prophetic sense. It can see things that are coming. It can see things that connect right now to the past. It can see everything. It's almost omnipresent. It can see other things in other people's lives. It can see things pertaining to things that are not of this world, right? It can explain to you how to solve solutions that you have never considered, that your mind has never thought of, right? It's very wise, but it's very sparing in its knowledge and the way that it gives you. But one thing that's certain, that the more you visit it, the more opportunity that you have in order to gain in knowledge, and to gain in that wisdom, the gain in that prophetic outcome that you're looking for, and to gain a path that you may not understand right now currently, but certainly that your higher self would not guide you incorrectly, right? A lot of people do not consider these things to be individuals. I definitely do, because I've talked to every single last one of them. And just like you respect your elders, you don't tell your elders what to do. You go and visit with them, you sit with them, you talk with them, you listen to their knowledge and wisdom, you show great respect for them. But if we were to talk about the other two in regards to the teenager and the young adolescent child, you're in charge of them. These are your children. You're in charge of your mind. You're in charge of your child. I don't know if you've seen this before, but there are certain people in this country and in this world who let their children run their lives. Go figure, huh? Now look around you, and what do you see? I see people letting children run their lives. The body says, I want to do this. I want to do this. I don't want to do that. The mind says, yeah, you should definitely do this because it'll be, that's what, and it's wrong. It convinces you. You give it authority over you. You let it run you when you shouldn't, because these are children. I experience dealing with my mind and my body much like I would my own children. For my ADHD child who has autism, which neither of my children do, but this is kind of how I would treat a child of mine who had such a condition or conditions. I would very much listen to them and be attentive to them. And I would give them exactly what they need. Definitely give them some things that they don't need at times, that they may want, because you have to draw the line somewhere. I'm not a very hard parent in regards to, strictness. Some people are. I see them all the time in the gym. They're very disciplined in the way that they direct their bodies. And it shows. And that's no differently than it will show in your children if you actually have children. When you're very disciplined and strict with your children, and you're very structured in how you do everything in their lives, and there's no leniency of acceptability when it comes to failure or mistakes, you can see that reflected. But sometimes that becomes toxic, right? It's not always good to constantly be hard on children and be hard on your adolescent or your teenage children as well. You don't want to alienate them from yourself. So you give them what they want sometimes, but you moderate it, right? It's okay to have a cookie here and there, but you don't overdo it, just like you don't overdo it with children. No differently than, once again, how I would treat my mind and my body. This is how I do it. But a lot of people, once again, let their children, run them. I see it all the time. Their mind is running them crazy. How many times have you heard people say, my children drive me crazy? And how many times have you heard people say, my mind drives me crazy? It's because they allowed them to be the authority figure in their house. That's why. Just to be clear, your body and your mind live in the same household. Your higher self lives far away. You have to go visit them. They don't live next door. They don't even live in the same household, like I said. You have to visit them. And you can't visit them all the time. I mean, some people do, but most people don't. I would suggest, working on and building that relationship, because they have great wisdom, right? But again, these are your children in your household, your mind and your body that you're dealing with. You have to be in charge. Sure, they may want to eat 10 cheeseburgers. Your body may want that. But is that healthy for your body? If your autistic child who has ADHD wanted to eat sweets all morning, all day, would you allow it? Of course not. So why are you doing that to your body? Why are you allowing that? No different. Moderation is very important. If your mind is not doing what it's supposed to be doing in the way that you have directed it, why are you allowing that? You are the more right and more wrong. You are the parent. You are the parental. Why are you allowing that? Fix it. Right? But anyways, I don't want to make this too long, My philosophical thinking, I can go on and on and on, but here we are. So, I hope you enjoyed the video. Check me out on Patreon. Check me out on Facebook. I'll try to drop videos more regularly. My schedule is a lot different this semester. And I should have more time. Definitely. But anyways, this has been the Wolf and Beta Close. May you have a good day. And of course, as you know it, you guessed it. Who guessed it? You did. Peace be with you.